For 3 rewatches in a row, I skipped these 2 episodes. I'd get to the part where Tony goes down, I'd see that beige California hotel come up on screen, and I'd start hitting the arrow key until he woke up. I was there for the gangsters. The gangsters weren't in it. Then last winter, I finally sat with them properly, phone in the other room, and I found out I'd had the whole thing upside down since the first time I ever watched this show. Quick reminder of where we are, because it matters. Season 6. Uncle Junior's mind has been going for 2 seasons now, and one night, Tony's over at Junior's house, standing at the stove, making the man spaghetti. Junior comes down the stairs, looks at his own nephew, and sees little pussy Malanga, a rival who'd been in the ground 6, 7 years by then. He shoots Tony in the stomach. Tony gets to a phone, dials 911, and goes under, and the show goes under with him. 2 episodes, Join the Club and Mayhem, March of 2006. The most feared man in North Jersey opens his eyes in a business hotel in Costa Mesa, California. With the accent gone, the walk gone, no idea how he got there. I always heard that fans revolted over this stretch. That's about half true. The critics were fine with it. 9 million people tuned in. The reviews were strong. It was people like me at home, doing the arithmetic on how many hours of this show were left, thinking, we've got a handful of Sundays with Tony Soprano, and we're spending them on a guy who lost his wallet. So let me spend 10 minutes on the guy who lost his wallet. I've come around to thinking it's the clearest look at what was wrong with Tony that we ever got. Here's what I had wrong, and I've got a feeling I'm not alone in it. In the dream, Tony is still Tony. That's his name, Anthony Soprano. He sells precision optics for a living, and he's good at it. One of the salesmen at the hotel mentions his team took the top spot 12 quarters running. Before optics, he sold patio furniture, which anybody watching since season 1 will clock immediately, because that's the daydream the real Tony has floated for years as the life he might have had. And this version of him is a decent man. He calls home. His daughter picks up and tells him she made the volleyball team, and you can hear the guy light up. A saleswoman named Lee makes it plain she's interested, and he lets it go past him. So where does Kevin Finnerty come into it? The night before, at a bar across the street from the hotel, Tony picked up the wrong wallet and the wrong briefcase. They belong to a man who looks like him. Kevin Finnerty, Kingman, Arizona, sells heating systems. And the man's a swindler. He put a heating system into a Buddhist monastery. It failed, and he left those monks to freeze through an entire winter. I want that to sit for a second, because I had it the other way around for the better part of my adult life. The honest man in that dream is Tony Soprano. Finnerty's the crook, which takes the popular theory apart. For years, I heard that Kevin Finnerty was the good, clean life Tony never got to live. What's actually on the screen is a decent version of Tony, walking around with a swindler's ID in his pocket, treated as the swindler by every single person he meets, unable to prove different. He shows up at the convention, an aerospace and industrial equipment show, and the woman at the desk asks him for photo ID. He opens the wallet, and there's another man's face in it. They turn him away at the door. He's carrying paperwork that belongs to a worse man. Now, the name. The show doesn't make you dig for this one. A guy at the bar hears Finnerty and runs the gag immediately. Infinity. Kev Infinity. A man whose surname is the word for having no edges and no end. And it's an Irish name, which is the part I keep chewing on. Tony is Italian down to the bone, and he spent his whole adult life explaining that the life came with the blood, that this is simply what happens to a certain kind of Italian in this country, that it was all settled before he was born. He has people standing right in front of him who prove otherwise. Melfi, the Cusimanos. He looks straight through every one of them. So in his own head, the man carrying that briefcase around couldn't possibly be Italian. An Italian with a life like that would mean the whole thing had been a choice the entire time, and a choice has somebody's name on it. Here's the detail that gets me every time. When he calls home and talks to his wife, that's a different actress on the line. Edie Falco isn't in the scene. The dream hands him the loyal husband, the kids, the whole set, and it keeps Carmela out of the room. And then there's the dinner. He's sitting with strangers who admire him, 46 years old, holding another man's credentials. And he says it out loud. Who am I? Where am I going? The woman across the table hands him the title of the episode, Join the Club. I've been that guy in a hotel bar on a work trip. I'd guess some of you have too. Nobody around for 400 miles who knows your name. A long, empty night in front of you, and the question just arrives on its own. Which brings me to the monks. And the monks are where this whole thing finally clicked for me. Every lazy version of a Buddhist monk on Western television is serene and patient and floating an inch off the carpet. These two are livid. They hear him check into the Omni under Finnerty's name, they corner him, and they start in on what that heating system did to their winter. He denies it. It goes physical fast. They knock him around a hotel lobby and clear out, and he's left standing there genuinely shaken by violence. Which, considering who this man is when he's awake, might be the darkest joke the show ever told. Then the paperwork lands. A court summons. Kevin Finnerty is being sued, and Tony's the one holding Kevin Finnerty's briefcase. His answer never changes. Wrong guy. I didn't sell you anything. It wasn't me. He's got the man's wallet in his pocket. He's sleeping in a room the man's name paid for, and he swears up and down he has nothing to do with the man's debts. I sat there watching that and thought, there he is. That's the whole man, right there, in one gesture. He's taken everything the life ever handed him. The money, the deference, the way a room drops to a murmur when he walks into it, and he has never once accepted the bill. Johnny Boy did this to him. Livia did this to him. The neighborhood did it. The Times did it. The panic attacks. The ducks. If everything he is came out of things that happened to him, then he never has to own a single thing he did. When he finally drives out to the monastery to explain himself, one of the monks stops him cold. No fraud without a fairy tale. Then the elevator breaks. He takes the stairs. He slips. He goes down hard, and he comes to in an emergency room. Minor concussion, they tell him, but the scan shows dark spots on his brain where the oxygen didn't reach, and the doctor tells him, flat out, that this is the early stage of Alzheimer's. I used to think that came out of nowhere. Felt arbitrary to me. Nothing had set it up. Run it against the rest of the arc, and it's the last card in the deck. The swapped wallet takes his proof away. The briefcase hands him a false answer. The convention turns that answer down at the door. The lawsuit puts a price on it, and the diagnosis finishes the job, because that disease is in the business of cutting a man loose from his own history. He'd go on living. Everything that ever made him himself would quietly let go, one piece at a time. And think about who put him in that bed. Junior. A man being hollowed out by exactly this, who fired a gun because he couldn't tell who was standing in his own kitchen. Tony's head reached for his shooter's illness and tried it on for size. The doctor walks out. Tony sits there on the edge of the bed by himself and says 2 words. I'm lost. I'd fast forwarded past that moment 3 separate times. Then, in the second episode, he follows a beacon out of town to a place called the Inn at the Oaks. Big house. Every window lit, music and laughter spilling out into the dark. Shapes of people moving behind the glass. It's a Finnerty family reunion. The flyer was in the briefcase all along. At the door, there's a man played by Steve Buscemi, credited in that episode only as Man, wearing the face of Tony Blundetto, the cousin Tony killed with his own hands. Somewhere back in the light, there's a woman who looks like his mother. And the man at the door tells him he can't bring the briefcase where he's going. That's the whole ask. Set down the borrowed name, the borrowed excuse, the case that was never his to begin with, and come inside. He grips it tighter. There's a voice coming down through the trees. His daughter's voice sliding into meadows, calling him back, and he keeps the case. He wakes up. He tells a nurse he sees things differently now. On his way out of that hospital, he takes his sister's hand and tells Janice that from here on, every day is a gift. I believe he meant it. He meant it for about an episode and a half. That's the thing that's been sitting in my chest since I finally watched these properly. Tony got the entire ghost story, the beacon, the reckoning, his dead cousin standing at the door, his mother waiting somewhere back in the light. Then he came back and picked that briefcase up off the floor and carried it the rest of the way to Holston's. That case was his alibi. He'd been carrying one his whole life, and the one time anybody asked him to set it down, he couldn't do it. So tell me something down in the comments. When he won't let go of that briefcase, what are you watching? A man holding on to his life, or a man who still can't say out loud that the life was his? I've been going back and forth on it for months, and I land somewhere different nearly every time.